Many conservatives and even a few voices on the left think President Trump's Middle East peace plan is achieving some potential victories. Trump is hopeful that his administration is taking the right steps to end the Israel-Gaza conflict and even secure the release of a hostage. He wrote in a Truth Social post Sunday, "I am happy to announce that Edan Alexander, an American citizen who has been held hostage since October 2023, is coming home to his family. This was a step taken in good faith towards the United States and the efforts of the mediators, Qatar and Egypt, to put an end to this very brutal war and return all living hostages and remains to their loved ones."
Meanwhile, the war between India and Pakistan is heating up. The two had apparently come to a ceasefire agreement on Saturday, but now the nuclear-armed countries are accusing each other of violating it just hours afterward.
At the same time, the more hawkish wing of the Republican Party is displeased, and there's some feuding within MAGA world about it. Here's Special Envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, in an interview with Breitbart News last week.
You're right. The neocon element believes that war is the only way to solve things. And the president believes that his force of personality, the way he is going to respond to situations, can bend people to do things in a much better way in the interests of the United States government. And I believe in that too.
Fox host Mark Levin bashed Witkoff. He said to save the name-calling for, quote, terrorist regimes like Iran rather than neocons. Levin wrote on X, LOL, the envoy talks like the fifth column isolationists. Nobody believes war is the only way. We wait with great interest to see the deal you're negotiating with the warmonger Iranian terrorist regime.
Vice President J.D. Vance jumped to Witkoff's defense, writing on X, "Pray that Hamas follows through and Edan gets to come home. If they do, it will have been another triumph of Steve Witkoff, who continues to face withering attacks for freeing hostages, negotiating complex diplomatic proposals, and serving his country at great financial cost." So we have a lot of Middle East topics to really go over today. I'm very glad to hear this news about the hostage being released. I think that's fantastic. And I think Witkoff's diplomacy on the Middle Eastern issue, I know you're not a fan of his diplomacy on the Russia-Ukraine front, but I think he's one of the cooler heads here in the Middle East situation, and that it is to the benefit of peace in the region. That's kind of been my theme of the day. I think averting conflict with Iran is good. I think de-escalating the Israel-Gaza situation is good. I think Trump's unconventional, to put it mildly, approach to foreign policy is really a boon in this region. And I think you have to acknowledge some positives here, no?
Well, I think that it is good that a hostage is released. I mean, I think that those people have suffered greatly. I think that, you know, I have been extremely critical of Israel's conduct in Gaza, and I think there are very, very, very valid reasons for that. That said, hostages have suffered a great deal, and this hostage apparently is going to be released. Where I have the problem, aside from with Israel's overall campaign, is that I think in recent times the Trump administration has in fact facilitated an approach that has caused suffering to a much greater number of people than, in a way that is not counterbalanced by the release of one hostage. We have seen in recent weeks Israel choke off aid, food to the Palestinians in a way that has caused terrible suffering. There has been a renewal of a military campaign that has killed thousands more people. Israel, in essence, broke the ceasefire agreement, and the Trump administration has done very, very little about any of that. It's almost been a carte blanche. Now, is that changing? If it does, I will applaud it. There has certainly been some coverage in recent days here of purported tensions between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu. I would like to believe that was the case. I do think that when the more recent ceasefire deal was being negotiated, the Trump administration, to its credit, leaned on Netanyahu a bit, and Witkoff leaned on Netanyahu a bit at that point. But look, in the individual case, is the hostage being released good? Yes. Is the massive suffering being imposed on the people of Gaza bad? Yes, it's catastrophic, it's disgraceful. We shouldn't be supporting it or facilitating it.
Sure, I don't disagree with that. I mean, it seems to me, I don't know all the details, it seems to me, and we get conflicting reports, that the Trump diplomatic negotiating team has put more pressure at not universally across the board, and there are different people in the administration who want different, but you see that in this Mark Levin, Steve Witkoff battle, where, yeah, Mark Levin is someone who would support Israel under all circumstances, who blames Iran, says Iran is the warmongers and we should be tough as nails with them. That's a policy independent of the Bush administration, really independent of, not so different from what was happening under Biden. Biden people didn't tell Israel to stop at all, one iota, and which and have criticized them for. Is this the ideal policy that I want? No. Is it better at some points in some ways? I think so. Maybe that's weak comfort, and I don't like the suffering, certainly, of the people in Gaza, and I want to bring it to an end. It seems like more pressure is being brought at various points by some factions of the Trump administration, and that's a good thing, and Netanyahu's not particularly happy about it, but he can't cross Trump, and so we have gotten a pause. I hope we get another pause. That's part of what these conversations with Qatar are about as well, and it's all a little unsavory, but we got to deal with unsavory people in order to have peace. That's all I ultimately want is peace.
Sure. First of all, thank you for acknowledging that I've been very critical of was very critical of the Biden administration at the time in its conduct in that part of the world. I thought it was disgraceful. In relation to Trump himself, it's hard for me to get past the idea that he has effectively backed the idea of what I consider just ethnic cleansing, just removing people from Gaza. Now, if they get a deal, he talked in the Truth Social post we mentioned about bringing this brutal war to an end, I think was his phrase. If he succeeds in that, I think it would be obviously a good thing. If anyone succeeds in that, government of Qatar, anybody else, then I think they will have done some belated service to humanity. In relation to the Iran question, I do think, to be fair to the MAGA world type of people, that the sidelining of people like John Bolton has been to the general advantage of policy and of prudence in that policy. So that, I think, is fair enough. I do think it is interesting the way there has been this battle that you just outlined between the neocon people who still remain and people who are of a more isolationist tendency. I think, to some extent, there has to be a conflict-by-conflict approach as to what the right measures are. I don't, for example, agree with them on Ukraine and Russia, where I would be much more supportive of Ukraine. But, if John Bolton has less influence on American policy regarding the Middle East, I think that's a good thing.
And on the other side of the aisle, not to not to kick someone when they're down, but if Kamala Harris was going to do something dramatically different than Joe Biden and just rubber stamping everything that was going on, she had plenty of opportunity to explain that and just didn't, and clearly lost votes because of it. So now we're up again, what the alternative would have been. Maybe it would have been better, maybe it would have been worse, maybe it would have been the exact same thing. She did not explain at all how it would have been different.
No, and even AOC, who I have defended here numerous times, is still getting flack from the left for that Democratic National Convention speech in which she said that Harris and Biden had been working tirelessly for a ceasefire between Israel and the Palestinians. I mean, that's a fanciful claim and one that I think will continue to haunt AOC if she goes forward, as she perhaps might, with a presidential bid.
I think so.
Next, Representative Jasmine Crockett is at it again. We'll tell you more next.